Today's video is another best and worst of 2023. Today we're going to be focusing on my favorite and least favorite complexion products that I tried this year. And if you like yearly roundup videos like this, be sure to hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on future ones. I'm going to be doing them all throughout the month of December. And of course, as always, this video is unsponsored. So if that sounds good to you guys, let's go ahead and jump right in and get started. All right, so why don't we go ahead and start with the worst products first, and then we'll end the video on a positive note. I usually like to do that. Hopefully this doesn't come across as too negative, but really I'm not saying that these are terrible products. They just didn't work out for me personally. And for reference, if you're new to my channel, I am 46 years old and I have dry skin with some fine lines and texture. So if you have similar skin concerns, then hopefully these recommendations or not recommendations will work out for you as well. So why don't we start out with primers and SPFs first. And there were a couple that I tried this month that were just really disappointing. In the primer category, I tried this one from Relove, which is a Makeup Revolution spin-off brand that's at Walmart. Everything is under $5. And this was their Power Fix primer. I thought it might be something similar to something like the e.l.f. Power Grip primer. It actually has a completely different texture. This is almost creamy. It doesn't have that really sticky feel that the e.l.f. one has, so I was pretty excited when I first applied it. Unfortunately, every single product I put on top of this ended up either pilling up or just not laying smoothly on my skin. I would have some patchiness and other issues that I didn't have with those foundations normally, so I figured it had to be this. Unfortunately, it was a bust, even though I was really excited about it because it was so affordable. And then the next two products in the kind of primer category are both SPFs. The first one is the Kosas Dream Beam. So this is another one that I initially loved. When I put it on my skin, I thought it looked really good. It has a little bit of a glow and a slight hint of tint. It also has really nice ingredients. It's a mineral SPF. It has peptides and ceramides, hyaluronic acid. So it's kind of almost like a skincare treatment slash SPF in one. And I admit this is okay if you're just going to be wearing it alone, but it does not play well with makeup, and I wear makeup most days. So I just felt like I really wouldn't get a lot of use out of this. Just like the Relove primer that I just talked about, this ended up pilling up under my makeup and just making everything not apply super smoothly. So I was really bummed about it because when you first put it on, it looks really good. Another SPF that didn't work out for me is the Eucerin Sensitive Mineral Face Sunscreen. So this is an SPF 35, also a full mineral formula, and it has a little bit of a tint, so it doesn't give the white cast, and it feels like a very rich moisturizer, which initially I loved. I thought it was so great. The first couple of times I wore this, I just wore it alone and I didn't layer it with any makeup. But then I took it on a trip with me and it was the middle of the summertime and I put makeup on top of it. Initially it was okay, but I noticed that throughout the course of the day, my makeup was just melting off of my face because this is just too greasy. And I have really dry skin, so normally that's not an issue for me, but this was above and beyond and just way too much hydration. So this is another one that if I'm just gonna kind of wear it as a moisturizer slash SPF, it would be okay, but it does not play well under makeup. So I just don't reach for it all that often because like I said, most days I'm wearing makeup. Moving on to skin tints, there were two of them that I tried this year that I really was not a big fan of. The first one is the Tarte Maracuja Juicy Glow. I know I've talked about this in other worst of videos that I've done throughout the year, but this was just so glowy. It was was like the Tin Man. When I put it on, my face looked like a disco ball. And because this is super light coverage, I even thought maybe I could use it as a tinted primer and then put something else on top of it. But it's so glowy that even with a foundation on top, it was still too much shimmer, and it ended up just enhancing all of my pores and texture on my face. So unfortunately, I never reached for this one. I could probably use it as a liquid highlighter maybe just to use it up, but I definitely would never use it all over my face again. Another skin tint that I was excited for, but it kind of let me down, is the Hourglass Veil Skin Tint. So this one has a really thick and rich texture, almost to the point of being sticky, and it never really dries down throughout the day. And even though I have dry skin and I like a little bit of a dewiness or a little bit of a glow, this was just too much. Every time I touched my face, it felt sticky. If I even like smiled and my cheeks went like this, I could feel this just sticky layer on my skin, and it was so uncomfortable. And I saw reviews on this from people with oily skin who were saying maybe those with drier skin might like it better, but I'm here to say, as a dry skin person, it's still way too much, just really greasy. It just turns my face into an oil slick, and that's really hard to do because my skin is so dry. So this was another big fail for me. Then when it comes to foundation, I tried so many foundations this year, but I really had to narrow it down to the 3 absolute worst. So the first one, I know I'm probably going to get a little bit of disagreement on this, but it's the Makeup by Mario Surreal Skin Foundation, and I didn't like this one mainly for the same reason I didn't like the Tarte Maracuja Juicy Glow, because this is way too shimmery. It just highlighted all of my pores and texture, and I did like how it feels on the skin, and I thought it gave really nice coverage. It looked good indoors. When I put it on in the house, I thought my skin looked great, and then I went outside and I was like, whoa, I didn't realize how much sparkle this had. And then throughout the day, I noticed it kind of settling into the pores even more. And then I would notice it even when I was in the house in indoor lighting. So I wanted to love this so much because it did look good initially when I first put it on, but it just didn't hold up for me. And like I said, the sparkle was just way too much. Another one that some of you may disagree with me on as well is the Maybelline Superstay Skin Tint. So this is kind of very similar to the L'Oreal skin tint that came out, I think it was 2 years ago. It's almost identical actually, and it has a really high alcohol content. It has denatured alcohol near the top of the list. It actually says that it's flammable on the back. And when you open it up, it really smells very strongly of rubbing alcohol. And just like the L'Oreal version, this dries out my skin so much. At first, it's fine. When I first put it on, I think it looks really good. It has a nice seamless finish. It sinks right into your skin and honestly looks pretty flawless. But the trouble comes after about an hour or two. I look in the mirror and I realize my skin is starting to look almost cracked, dry. By the end of the day, it's starting to look flaky. I think those of you who don't have dry skin would be perfectly fine with this. And even those of you who do, sometimes it just works out for some people and not others. But for me, this was just way too drying. No matter how much I prepped and moisturized my skin, it always ended up looking dry at the end of the day. So unfortunately, this one was a huge fail as well. And then the third foundation, and possibly the worst of the 3, is the Essence Keep Me Covered long-lasting foundation. So this one was an immediate dislike. It wasn't like I put it on, it looked okay for a while, and then it looked bad. It just looked bad from the start. And this one, it kind of looked very makeup-y, very heavy, almost like paint on my skin, and it sinks into my pores pretty much almost instantly. It looked extremely dry. I guess it makes sense because it's supposed to be a very long-wearing and waterproof formula, and sometimes those can be a little bit more drying on the skin. But I do remember that this also didn't have the best reviews across the board, from influencers on YouTube to even just going on the Ulta website. It has pretty bad reviews, more negative than positive, I would say. So again, it's kind of sad because this is an affordable formula. I wish it were better, but unfortunately, it just did not work for me. And actually, this is a good segue into concealer because the Keep Me Covered concealer from Essence basically did the same thing. It looked very heavy, very cakey under my eyes. It sank into the fine lines. It made me look older. I was definitely disappointed in this one, especially because it claimed to be a creamy medium coverage with aloe vera. It was supposed to be more hydrating, and I just didn't find it to be that at all. And then there was one more concealer that I tried this year that I thought was pretty terrible right off the start. That was from Moira, actually. And I normally like all of Moira's stuff, but once in a while they have something that I'm just not a huge fan of. So this was their CC Prep Concealer. So it was supposed to be a concealer and color corrector in one, which I thought sounded really great. But when I put this on, this is another product that just has so much shimmer in the formula. It's very, very glowy. And when I put it under my eyes, I realized it just highlighted the fine lines, any texture that was in the inner corner here where I put it. It just was making it look glaringly obvious. And that's not what I want in a concealer at all. I know sometimes companies put shimmer or like these brightening, light reflecting particles in concealers, and they claim that they're supposed to reflect light away. I want to say it's probably a more helpful thing for someone who has dark circles to have that reflective property under your eyes. But for me, as someone in my mid-40s that has fine lines and texture, the shimmer is definitely not my friend. And then when it comes to powder, I didn't try a ton of them this year, but there was one in particular that I felt like really didn't suit me. And that was the Makeup Forever HD Skin Twist and Light. So this one had really cool packaging. It has a little well in the center, and you just kind of twist the bottom back and forth. It releases powder, and then you just stick your brush in there. So the packaging is really neat. I liked that a lot. But unfortunately, this was another product that was just super glowy. When I put it on, it almost looked like I was applying a highlighter, and I was pretty shocked by that. I mean, it is called Twist and Light, so I thought it was gonna maybe have a little tiny bit of glow, but this was over the top, not what I was expecting. And again, it highlighted all of my pores and texture. So I feel like there's kind of a common theme running through a lot of the products that were in my bottom, and that was just that they had a lot of glow to them. If you're somebody who likes glow, then you may want to give these products a try, but unfortunately, that's what made them flops for me. All right, so with the worst out of the way, let's talk about the things that I really, really loved this year. So we'll start out with SPFs again. I have 3 that I've tried that I really like a lot. The first one is from Hero Cosmetics. I actually learned about this one from Jessica Braun, and this is called the Force Shield Super Beam Sunscreen. This has SPF 30, and it's supposed to have a sheer glow with pearl apricot pigments. So this one does have a little tiny bit of glow, but it's not over the top glowy. This is also a 100% mineral sunscreen, which I really like. Sometimes I can react to certain chemical sunscreens, so I have to be careful which ones I choose, especially when it comes to US sunscreens. With Korean brands, I can usually use a chemical and be fine. So I really liked this formula for a mineral sunscreen. It is very, very sheer. It has a nice light fluid texture, and I like the little tiny added bit of glow that it gives my skin, and that apricot pigment that it has kind of color corrects my skin, gives it a little bit of life, and just the slightest hint of tint. And because it's a mineral formula, it doesn't have that sunscreen smell, it's not sticky, and makeup goes on really beautifully on top of this. So this was a huge favorite of mine this year. And then I also had 2 Korean sunscreens that I was just absolutely in love with. Now, these are both chemical sunscreens, but like I said, with the Korean filters that haven't been approved here in the United States yet, I feel like they are way ahead of the game because these do not irritate me at all. So the first one that I really was loving is by Hamish. It's their Artless Glow Base. This is an SPF 50, PA+++, and this is another slightly glowy option. It's not going to be glittery like the Tarte Maracuja Juicy Tint, so no worries there. It just gives your skin just a little tiny bit of like a pearlized finish, and once you put foundation on top of it, it really doesn't peek through all that much. It just prevents my skin from looking kind of flat or matte. If I want just a little bit of a dewy look, this gives me that. And also I feel like the formula is just really nice and thin and weightless. It feels basically like a moisturizer. So overall, really loving that one. And then the other one that I think is probably my favorite out of all of them is the Beauty of Joseon sunscreen. This is also a Korean formula, and this has SPF 50 plus with the PA++++. And this one is the most beautiful sunscreen. I talked about this in a very recent video, and I'm just head over heels for this. I haven't wanted to even use my other ones because this is so invisible for a sunscreen. It has no scent. None of these do, by the way, that I mentioned, but it has no scent. It sinks right into the skin just like a very lightweight fluid moisturizer, almost a serum texture. It's that thin and undetectable. It doesn't have any glowy properties like the Hamish one, but it does give your skin a little bit of dewiness just because it's adding more hydration. And I've never had a problem with makeup going on top of this one either. It's really so seamless, and base products go right on top of this with ease. So I was super impressed. This was a recommendation from some of you guys, so thank you so much for introducing me to this because it's literally become my new favorite sunscreen. All right, next, when it comes to foundation, I have quite a few that I tried that I really loved. It was so hard to choose between them, so I'm just gonna touch on all of the ones that I liked the best. The first one is the Moringa Ceramide BB Cream from Hamish. This is another Korean brand, and this also has SPF 30, and it has a really nice medium coverage, but it feels like a moisturizer going on. It's very, very hydrating. It doesn't cling to dry patches like a foundation would because it has that moisturizer-like quality. It has a beautiful satin finish that looks like skin, so it's not glowy, and it's also not flat matte. It's just that perfect everyday skin-like finish. So I would say this was probably my number one. I mean, you can see I'm almost down to the bottom of the tube. I'm down to here because this is the one that I use the absolute most. In second place, very close to that, would have to be the IT Cosmetics CC Plus Nude Glow. So this has replaced their regular CC cream for me. This is a lighter version of it, and I just love it so much. It was hard to pick between these two. They're kind of a very, very similar product. This also has, I would say, a medium coverage with a satin-like finish. It has SPF 40, so it has a little bit more than the Hamish does. But I would say the one downside to the IT Cosmetics is that the shade range didn't quite match me. I have fair light. If I go down to the fair, it's too light. If I go up one shade, it's too dark. This one is just a little too warm toned for me, whereas the Hamish one, even though this is a Korean brand that doesn't have the best shade range, and I think the IT Cosmetic one is slightly better, this shade number 23C Nude is a perfect cool tone, and it really suits me so much better than this one. And also the Hamish one is like half the price of the IT Cosmetics. So if you're between the two, if you can find a shade match in this one, I would just go for this. If not, the IT Cosmetics is a really beautiful product, and I wore this one a lot this year as well. When it comes to my favorite full coverage foundation that I tried this year, that would have to be Estee Lauder Double Wear. Even though this isn't a new foundation, I tried it for the first time in 2023, so that's why I'm including it. I bought it during the Ulta 21 Days of Beauty sale back in March, and I had always been afraid of this because I heard that it looked really drying on the skin. But then when it went 50% off, I felt like, all right, I'm just gonna try it and see what happens. And I actually really like this a lot. Now, I do have to make sure that my skin is very well moisturized because it has a tendency to be a little bit dry. But if my skin is well hydrated and I usually apply it with a damp beauty sponge, it goes on flawlessly. It has a very skin-like finish for something that has such full coverage. It doesn't look thick or heavy or mask-like. It's a very thin, almost serum-like texture, but it still has a ton of pigment in the formula. So it just worked out really well for me. I know this isn't everybody's cup of tea, and there are very mixed reviews. Some people swear by it, other people don't love it. For me, it's not something that I wear on an everyday basis, but when I'm going on camera sometimes or to an event somewhere and I really want to look flawless and I want my makeup to last all day, this is super long lasting and it's just a really good option. So I really, really like this one. All right, so we covered my favorite BB and CC creams and my favorite high-end foundation. So my favorite medium foundation of 2023 is the Revlon Illuminance. This foundation is really such a beautiful formula. Even though it's called Illuminance, I thought it was going to be a little bit glowy or glittery. On me, it isn't. I find it to maybe have like a satin finish, so it's not sparkly, but it's also not a flat matte. And I just love that. I think it has a perfect skin-like finish. It has a nice shade range that actually has some cooler undertones for those of us who find that a lot of foundations look yellow. And it's just a really hydrating, moisturizing formula that looks very smooth on my skin. It doesn't cling to dry patches. It doesn't settle into fine lines and pores. And like I said, it's just that perfect medium coverage. This is an all-around really great formula that I've had amazing luck with. So I really love this. And then when it comes to lighter coverage foundations, there are two that I'm really enjoying. The first one is L'Oreal's True Match Super Blendable Foundation. So this one, it's funny because I haven't found an exact color match for me, even though True Match is supposed to have one of the best color ranges out there. I have had the hardest time finding it in store. I might have to just look online and see if maybe there are more options, because where I bought this at my local CVS, it really, all of the colors looked very warm and very yellow. I had a hard time finding a cool undertone. But that being said, the formula of this is fantastic. It has a really nice thin, almost serum-like texture, similar to their skin tint, but this one doesn't have the alcohol that dries out my skin. So this looks incredibly flawless. It just sinks right into your skin and disappears, yet it gives more coverage than a skin tint. I wouldn't say it's full coverage by any means. It's definitely on the lighter side, but you can build it up if you want to, or you can just add concealer to certain spot areas. That's usually what I do. So I just love how flawless this is, and it looks amazing on the skin, and even close up, it doesn't look like you're wearing makeup, and I love that about it. And then my other favorite is a really affordable find from Relove at Walmart. This is the Super Serum Foundation, and I was pleasantly surprised by this one. I know I said I didn't enjoy their primer, but this formula is actually kind of similar to the L'Oreal, but it's much less expensive. Like I said, everything in this line is $5 or less. So they're really super affordable, and I felt like the line overall has been very hit or miss, but this was one of the hits for sure. It has a nice thin texture that really looks like skin. I would say it has a light to medium coverage that I was actually pretty surprised with, because it was a skin tint. I was expecting it to be extremely sheer, but it does pack a punch in a little bottle. So I was really happy with this one as well, especially for the price point. Next, when it comes to concealer, I also have three favorites that I chose from all of the ones that I tried in 2023. I have a full coverage, medium coverage, and then a lighter coverage option. So for full coverage, my favorite by far was the Flower Beauty Get Real Serum Concealer. So when I first saw this, I was kind of expecting it to be lighter coverage based on the name, but I was blown away by how full coverage this is, and at the same time, it looks incredibly natural under your eyes. It has a really fast drying formula, so I find that this doesn't crease because it's not super dewy under your eyes, but at the same time, it's also not dry. It doesn't look cakey, especially if you just use a little bit, and a little bit goes a very long way. And to be honest, I usually stay away from full coverage concealers because, like I said, I'm in my mid-40s, and usually they can look a little bit heavy under the eyes, but this one somehow it looks so smooth all day, and it stays put. It doesn't settle into fine lines or wrinkles. It is just a beautiful, beautiful product. But again, just don't go overboard with it. You really don't need to, because a tiny little dot goes a really long way. So I really love this one. And then for medium coverage, I was kind of between this one and the House Labs concealer, but I picked this one instead. This is the Natasha Denona High Glam Concealer. So the reason that I chose this over the House Labs is because that one is a little thicker. It looks okay under my eyes, but I feel like it has a tendency to look a little bit dry sometimes. And this one just is so flawless. It's the perfect medium coverage. This is the one I would say I use the most out of all of the ones that I'm going to talk about today. It has a very light serum-like texture. It's super hydrating. It gives me enough coverage. I usually don't need full coverage on an everyday basis. So this gives me exactly what I need while just looking super flawless under the eyes. And again, it doesn't crease. It doesn't settle into my fine lines. It just looks very, very smooth. So this is definitely, I would say, out of the three, my number one pick. If I had to buy one, this one is it. And then my favorite light coverage formula is the Glowish by Huda Beauty. This one is called the Bright Light Concealer. And this, it's funny because I noticed they had a bunch of negative reviews on the Sephora website, and the reviews were all about the packaging. For some reason, over time, I guess the white pigment in the cap is like coming off on people's hands. I have not experienced that at all. Granted, I don't use this on an everyday basis, so I'm not sure why that's happening. But as far as the formula goes, it has really, really good reviews. And the reason for that is because this just looks so natural. If you don't need need to cover a lot under your eyes, but you just want to brighten things up a little bit. This is so incredibly beautiful. It almost feels like a hydrating serum. It's super thin. It adds moisture and hydration under my eyes, but yet somehow it also doesn't crease. It doesn't look cakey. So I was really impressed by this formula, and I normally wear this just on my no makeup days. If I just am in a quick hurry, I just blend it with my fingers, and it's really a no fuss product that just kind of brightens up your eye area a little bit to kind of get you out the door. So this is another amazing option, and its drugstore counterpoint would have to be the Revlon Skin Awaken Concealer. These two are both my favorites. I love both of these so much for those lighter coverage days, and this one, it has the little sponge tip applicator like the Maybelline Age Rewind, but this one looks so much more flawless under the eyes. It is so much smoother. I don't know if Maybelline changed the formula of the Age Rewind over time, because I used to love that, and for some reason it looks so dry under my eyes these days. So I don't know if it's just because I'm getting older or if the formula is different, but either way, I haven't used that one in a few years now, and I just love this one instead. It has that really nice thin formula, really similar to the Glowish. And I don't know how, but it just looks so smooth under your eyes. It almost makes my eyes look smoother than before I put it on. And they do have some corrector shades as well. This is the pink one. It's a really pale pink, and it does such an amazing job at brightening up my under eye area. Plus it has caffeine, so it helps to depuff and just make your eyes look more awake. And I definitely notice a difference when I wear this one. If I had to pick between these, I would probably pick the Revlon one over the Glowish. I like them both. I think they're pretty close, but the Revlon one just offers slightly more coverage, and I like the shade range on this one a little bit better for me as well. They have some cooler undertones. And then when it comes to powder products, I have a powder foundation that I tried in 2023 that is my #1 favorite, and that is the Moira Complete Wear Powder Foundation. I love Moira's powders. Every powder that they've come out with, I've really enjoyed it a lot, and that's pretty rare for me because having dry skin, I generally don't love powders, but these have all been incredibly dry skin friendly. They're pressed powders, they're loose powders, and this powder foundation. So this is just such an incredibly finely milled formula. I use the puff to apply it because you get the best coverage that way. You can use a brush if you want to, but I find that you have to build it up a little bit in order to get coverage. With the puff, you just swirl it in the powder and just put it on. I actually demonstrated this in a video, and a bunch of you guys had purchased it and let me know later on how much you love it as well. It just looks so flawless and almost airbrushed without being dry. It smooths over pores and makes them look less visible. It's such a beautiful product, and with the puff, I would say you get a nice solid medium coverage. I used this all summer, and I loved how it felt really lightweight on my skin instead of heavier like a foundation. So this is amazing. And then when it comes to just regular setting powders and pressed powders, I tried two this year that I really liked. The first one is the Easy Bake and Snatch from Huda Beauty, and this one she'd sent me in PR. I have it in the Cherry Blossom shade, which is the light pink. And this is another really smooth, undetectable powder. It doesn't look powdery on your skin. It doesn't look dry. It's pretty invisible. But I think if I had to pick this one or the other one, I would pick the other one. So this one is from I'm Mimi, and it's their Pink Blur Tone Up Packed. So I actually showed these in a dupe video because I got both of them around the same time, and it was kind of easy to compare them at that point since I was testing them out simultaneously. And I just like the I'm Mimi one so much better. I know I showed in a video how it looks on the skin, and I know I was calling this airbrush in a compact because that's exactly what it does. I just pick it up on the puff that they give you, kind of like I do with the Moira powder foundation, and I just apply it that way, and it's like it just erases all of your pores, texture. It makes your skin look so soft and smooth, and the slightly pink color just brightens everything up. And again, I was amazed that this also did not make my skin look dry. So while the Huda one is nice, I would say my only complaint about this is that it has a little tiny hint of glow to it, and usually Usually if I'm reaching for a powder, I want something that's gonna mattify my skin and make it have that more airbrushed look. And I think this does it just a little bit better. It just looks a little bit more flawless, but I do like this one as well. All right, guys, so those are my favorite complexion products of 2023. I would love to hear what yours are down in the comments below. And if you missed my best eyeshadow palettes of 2023 video, I'll go ahead and just put that right up here and you can check that one out next if you have some extra time. And I want to thank you all so much for stopping by, for spending time here with me. I really, really appreciate it. If you enjoyed today's video, I hope you'll consider hitting the subscribe button before you go, and I will see you all in my next video. Take care, guys. Bye.